I'm going live on time. Okay. Hi, good evening. This is Alicia James. I am the president and the founder of the PAM Project. Please don't get worried. For some odd reason, my computer has frozen, but I will not let that stop this conversation tonight. Tonight, I am on my third interview of Black moms who are making a social change in their communities or in the Black community. Before I allow my guests to start talking, I will say that the whole purpose of the PAM Project is advocating and promoting Black mental mothers and their well-beings. I am so happy to use the month of August to celebrate Black Philanthropy Month and also Black Business Month. I can't believe this is happening in real time that I'm frozen. I'm super excited to have my third guest join us tonight as she's going to share the work that she's doing. As I said before, this is my third guest. My first guest was from New York. My second guest last night was from Baltimore. And so now I have ventured off into California. Ayula Sunshine Mitchell is my guest, and you can see her in real time. She is not frozen, thank God. So I will bring her in. She is the president of Educate to Elevate. She has a trauma transform and inform consultant. She has been dealing with healing, facilitating. She works with those who have been harmed by violence and the responsible parties. She has spent more than 3 decades working in the fields of criminal and social justice. I'm no longer frozen, thank God.
You're unfrozen.
The show must go on. So grateful to God that I'm not frozen anymore. As I was saying before, she has been doing this work for more than 3 decades, and she shows up every day in her full-time job and also volunteering and constantly promoting the importance of healing in our community and advocating for the voiceless. And so I'm super excited to have her here tonight and have her tell her story, her journey of being a Black mother, her story of being a social entrepreneur, her story of being a change agent in our community, and also being a healer. So I want to just first say to my guests, how are you doing with everything that you do? How are you doing in taking care of yourself?
Fortunately, I have learned over the years how to balance everything. Sometimes I do it better than others, but overall, I do a really good job of self-care. I have learned that if I don't take care of myself, I am just a hot mess for everybody else. And so I do make myself a priority, and that looks many different ways. Before the pandemic, I would usually go to the movies on Fridays. I would spend half the day at San Quentin, and then after I would go to the movies. That's one of my favorite things to do. I love to get pedicures, again, before the pandemic. I spend time, we have a family group chat that is just hilarious. So I do a lot of things. I like to read. I like to binge watch. I watch Grey's Anatomy like I've never seen it before. So I'm constantly watching those reruns. And just really, sometimes I just will be sitting on my balcony. I got a new kitchen table, and then I was going to get the old one hauled to the dump, and then I put it on my balcony, and then I realized the afternoon sun shines on my balcony, and so I've turned the table into a chair, and I'll just go sit out there in the sun. It's beautiful greenery where I live, and just relax. So that's what I'm doing and I have to stay centered. I can feel myself when I'm off center, when I'm off keel, and I will pause to get myself recentered. It's necessary.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. I mean, at this point, I'm glad to hear you said you found a way to balance it all. during this pandemic is definitely hard. For those who haven't watched previous videos for the PAM Project, this is Iola's second time being a guest with me. And the previous conversation, we were talking about Black mothers advocating for the community and teaching the community how to advocate for themselves. And so I'm excited to bring you back this time, and this time focus on your particular work and how it's helping our communities and making an impact. So also, I want to just ask, during this pandemic, what have you been experiencing? Excuse me, in terms
My
of your mental health.
Well, my journey during this pandemic has been interesting because if you remember, first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate. I just love working with you every chance I get. But if you remember, we were in New York,
Right.
and I went from New York to Philly to Jersey. But in New York, one of my speaking engagements was canceled because of the coronavirus. And because we had been at the conference and I had been super busy, I wasn't really watching the news or anything. So I didn't really know what was going on. And so I went, like I said, I went from New York to Philly and then New Jersey. I spoke at Rutgers, and they were saying that the following week they were going to close the campus and go virtual learning, distance learning, because of the coronavirus. And then I began to think, well, if it's so serious, why are you waiting a whole nother week to shut down the campus? And then I went to Michigan, where I was supposed to meet with a client for the first time in one of the Michigan prisons. A few of the prisons have been closed, but that one was still open. And literally that morning I got up and I got ready. And from the time I got up until the time I got ready to go, the prison shut down, visiting had stopped. So I was really confused because like everybody, I didn't really understand what was going on. You just kept hearing about the coronavirus. And then as I finally made it back to California, I had been in 5 states in 2 weeks. And when I got back to California was when things were really starting to shut down. I got word from my job that all programs had been canceled. And I got back on the Sunday. I was supposed to go back to work that Wednesday, but I went back to work the next day. And so it's been a lot of confusion because the information, I don't trust the media to begin with. And the information had been misinformation and fragmented information. And then going back to work in a jail. So then it became a little bit hectic because, again, we weren't getting a lot of information. Things were just shutting down. Managing what was going on in the country, managing what was going on with staff, civilian and sworn staff there, managing what was going on with the men in custody who were, if we thought we weren't getting information, they were getting even less information than we were. And so it was managing a lot of different people's emotions. Fortunately, I'm calm all the time. And then my family, who weren't real keen on me going back to work in the jails. So that's really been my experience. I know that it's serious. I know that people are dying. I know that there doesn't appear to be any end in sight. But it has always been about, as usual, me more managing other people. I had 2 kids in college. One was graduating. Her graduation was canceled. One was being recruited to go from junior college to a 4-year college. And recruitment became Zoom meetings with coaches. So things have been very hectic because as an essential worker, I still continue to work and deal with the regular family things that I always deal with.
I have to tell you, if you notice, I'm frozen again. But you know what? As long as my mic is on and they can see you, because this interview is about you and celebrating you and the work you're doing in community, I'm still good with this. Until I get unfrozen, I'm just going to continue with the interview.
Absolutely.
I'm happy that your children, as I'm listening to you, you are able to help them navigate through all of this It's unfortunate that, um, their education had to be on hold, and, in terms of graduation and all of that. But I'm happy that things are moving forward. As a mom, before we even get into the work that you're doing, what are your thoughts on students returning to school, your kids returning to school?
It's been really interesting. All four of my five children are adults. My youngest daughter, who is 16 and getting ready to start her senior year, she had been doing independent study, but she had been doing her work at a charter school. So she was able to get the support, academic support that she needed while continuing her high school, working toward her high school diploma. My oldest daughter, who my youngest daughter lives with, had decided that she can just be supported by a tutor because she is doing really, really well. So
Okay.
she hasn't been impacted by virtual learning, distant learning, but being in the house all the time.
Yeah.
Definitely, I was down there this weekend. The whole family was together, and it's definitely impacting her because she can go for a walk, but in terms of going anywhere, my oldest daughter, my parents, and my youngest daughter live together. So of course, my parents being high risk because they're 82 years old, you have
Right.
to be super cautious around them. So in another instant, she might be able to do a little bit more, but in this case, she can't. My next Noah, who is my 20-year-old, he is at Davis. We made the decision. He made the decision that he wanted to go to Davis. And play ball there. And
Davis, what's the full name of the school?
I'm sorry, it's University of California at Davis.
Okay.
And we had numerous conversations with the coach, the coaches, and I was really comfortable with the plan that they had in place for their athletes. So we took him, it's always a family affair with us. We took him to school on August 2nd. And it was really different because this was my third kid going to college. So usually you're there and you're moving them in the dorm and you're helping them set up their room. And it's just a whole big deal where we literally dropped him off and his coaches came down and helped him get all of his stuff and take it up into his room. I've only seen his dorm room on FaceTime and on Zoom, but they are treating their athletes like the NBA is treating their program, the bubble. So he quarantined for 10 days, and that Monday they decided learning that everything was going to be virtual as far as the classes. He's doing well. He's bored, and now with the fires here in Northern California, they can't even go outside and work out. So he's hanging in there though. And then my 22-year-old who graduated, so she did graduate from Dillard University in May, and the graduation was virtual. She was really devastated because she had worked so hard. She was determined to finish in 4 years, and she worked her butt off to finish in 4 years. And again, with our family, everything is a big deal. And there were about 25 of us planning to go down to New Orleans for her graduation. So she was extremely disappointed. We all were, but at the same time, we all understood the why of it. She came home for a while and she returned to New Orleans in August in July to begin graduate school and to teach first grade virtually. And so my oldest daughter and I have been supporting her as much as we can. As a first year teacher, it's tough enough. And then you have to teach first grade virtually. So really been, encouraging her and talking to her every other day. And, so she's in graduate school and she's teaching. She got her first apartment. She's doing really well. And I think the key has been with everybody is just supporting each other. My son, my second oldest, he is also a teacher. He teaches
Wow.
PE in elementary school. He's a coach. And he's like the kids. Like, I need to see the kids. And how can you teach PE virtually? And, I'm in it for the kids. And so he's had an adjustment. And I was thinking his sons will start school in 2 weeks. So he will be teaching virtually in one room. And then his boys will be distant learning. One is 7th grade and one is 2nd grade. Again, it's everything has just been this huge adjustment. And
Right.
then my oldest daughter, who has her own business, she has a clinic where they provide therapy to autistic kiddos and their families. Initially, they weren't working at all in the beginning of the pandemic, and now she's only at 50% because 50% of her work were her staff going into homes. And
Mm-hmm.
she has a limited number of kiddos coming to the center. So that's been an adjustment as well. But we're all, we all have tremendous faith, and we're a
Right.
very close-knit family. And we just know God has us, and it's just been a major adjustment, not seeing each other. And we got created with that. We've been Zooming. Some of us, there's 4 of us Zoom every Sunday, and then we'll have, a Zoom night. We've done Zoom game night with the family. And so we've just made it work. We have one now, we got one in Davis, California, one in New Orleans, 2 in Southern California, myself in the Bay Area. My oldest son is about 45 minutes from me. So we're really kind of spread out, but we're making it work.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm frozen again. But one of the things I'm enjoying about listening to you, and for those who are watching this on the live or also the replay, is that you have a village. I constantly promote on social media the importance of having a village, and through whatever is happening in the world, your family is adjusting and adapting to it, and your children and you have a support system for one another, and that is so nice to hear that, because a lot of people don't have that, and a lot of people have experienced during this pandemic how strong or weak their village really is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for those moms who are single parents who might not may have to rely heavily on resources, and during this pandemic some of those resources are no longer available, and then where they might have had to fall on their family members or close friends, if they also are at a strain, all of a sudden they realize how strong or how much they need people, or the importance of asking for help. So as I'm listening to you, it's good to hear that you have that. And as I'm encouraging other people to re-examine what their village looks like. So one of the reasons why you were selected to be a part of this week-long interview series is to talk about how you show up for the community. So I want you to talk about the work that you're doing and how that planted seed caused you to also launch your business, Educate to Elevate. So first talk about the work that you're doing, and then I know we only have an hour, and you're doing amazing you're doing amazing work, but also I want people to fully understand how that passion, that commitment, inspired you to launch your own business.
The work that I do, I have a full-time job where I work for the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, where I develop and oversee programs. And what that looks like in the age of Corona, there are no programs in the jail now. And so I really have been providing higher level support services to the guys that are in custody. Sometimes that just looks like going into the pods and just being in there and talking to them, just spending time in there talking to them. They most of them have been knowing me for a long time because I've been around this sheriff's department for a long time. And we implemented video visits since the pandemic has started because visiting had been canceled. And so I'm facilitating video visits at the facility where I work. And that has been a really important part of them adjusting to being incarcerated during a pandemic, because for the first 2 months, 3 months, they weren't able to see their loved ones. Not everyone is able to call. The video visits are free. And now actually San Francisco is the first county jail in the country that has free phone calls. So all the phone calls from people in custody are free. The video visits are free. And so that, so that's how I've been supporting the men that are at the facility, incarcerated in the facility where I work, being much more of a liaison than before the coronavirus, making sure that, they're getting messages to their attorneys, social workers, facilitating the CPS required visitation with the men who have children who have open CPS cases. And it's a lot. It's a lot. The work is a lot, but
Right.
the managing of people's emotions are a lot. And just about everybody's on heightened emotion. Emotions are heightened. They are only, because of social distancing, the pods hold 48 men, and because of social distancing, they're only coming out eight men at a time, which means they are having a significant decrease in their free time. So they're spending a lot of time, in their cells, which isn't the norm, because at the jail where I work, pre-COVID, we have a high school in the jail. So the men leave their living pods and go to school all day, or they participate in programs. They have parent-child visits every Saturday where the children come into the facility and visit with the dads. There's a Stanford reading group. There's a Stanford writing group, and that's where graduate students from Stanford University come in and facilitate groups with the guys. There are a myriad of programs that go on pre-COVID at the facility where I work, and that has just all been shut down. Myself and my two coworkers were the only program staff who were allowed into the facility as an essential worker, because we do work for the Office of the Sheriff. And that was also a lot because we decreased there's been a significant decrease in the number of men in custody in San Francisco. I believe it's like 40% decrease in those incarcerated in San Francisco since the pandemic began, which is excellent. At the same time, at the facility where I work, the count hovered around 450. And again, with 3 civilian staff going in there, that's a lot of people to interact with. And because I am the one who has been around the longest, the one the men know the most, I've built relationships with them, is constantly Ayula, Ayula, Ayula. In fact, today, I had to go see a young man, and I went up to his door and I said, "I heard you summon me." He said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Because I got 3 messages from 3 different people that you wanted me to come see you." And so is that, spread really thin, which is again why self-care is so important. So that's the work that I do full time. And the volunteer work that I do in the community, my work schedule is Sunday through Thursday. And pre-COVID, I was in San Quentin on Fridays and Saturdays every week, working with men who are writing curriculum, working with men who are preparing to go to the parole board, facilitating a group on Saturdays, supporting other programs, because every program has to have a volunteer person to support the program so that it can happen. So my weeks have always been full, and doing a lot of traveling, participating in conferences, speaking on panels, doing trainings, just a lot of different things that I was doing. And literally over a 2-year period of time, every month with the exception of 2, I was traveling someplace.
How
And
how do you, when, I want to get to the point of how this spilled over for you taking on this entrepreneurial journey for yourself. But I'm frozen again.
that's
How
okay.
do you find when do you find time for yourself? Answer that, and then I want everyone to learn more about the Educate to Elevate. I can't believe I'm frozen again.
Oh, I take time for myself. I make time for myself. So I will take a day off from work in a heartbeat. I say all the time, I work for the county. Don't give me sick time, comp time, vacation time, holiday, floating holidays, all of that, because I'm definitely going to take it. And so when I need to take a day, I realize that I need to take a day, and then I will just take a day off. Educate to Elevate came about actually a long time ago. It was something back in 2007, 2008. I was working full time in ministry, and I was really missing working with those behind the walls. And so I wanted to do something in addition to my full time job at our church at that time. And I created Educate to Elevate, which at the time, my vision was to connect those behind the walls with resources that they may need. And so it could be anything. If there were people who had innocents who had been wrongly convicted, then I would send them resources of organizations that they could write to who may consider taking their case. If there were women who had loved ones behind the walls, I would connect them with support programs or groups that would help them. So just really as a resource network is what I envisioned initially. And then in 2009, as you know, Alicia, my son was shot and he survived 17 gunshot wounds. And Educate to Elevate was put on hold as we dealt with his recovery. And most people know my story. Our family was impacted by trauma and tragedy multiple times over a short period of time. And I just began focusing on my family and healing of my family and things of that nature. And I always, it's funny because I have had the domain name Educate to Elevate since like 2007, and I never actually built the website, but I just kept on renewing the domain name. And as I began to transition my focus to healing, that's what I started doing. And that's really been, now that's my passion and that's what I do now. And so now the focus of Educate to Elevate is about healing and about learning about how trauma impacts our lives and how we have to heal from trauma. And oftentimes people are not even aware of how trauma manifests in their lives. And interestingly, as I was saying to you earlier, as I was driving home from work, I laugh as if I don't have enough of my own children. I have acquired children along the way. And as I was driving home today, one of my bonus sons called me, and he's in prison here in California. And we were talking about one thing, and then that morphed into something else. And I was talking to him about his causative factors and how, our parents show up with their trauma, and his mom showed up with her trauma. And he was on the receiving end of her trauma. And then how that has manifested in his behavior as it relates to substance abuse, as it relates to violence, as it relates to incarceration. And his dad, who raised him, was in and out of jail and prison most of his life. And so you had a mom who was significantly abusive and neglectful, and then you had a dad who taught you criminality. And you know, I told him, like, that doesn't make them bad people, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It means that you had a lot of pain and you had a lot of trauma that went unprocessed. And so this journey of mine on facilitating the healing of other people, I can only do because I've done my healing work around the trauma and loss that I've been through, and even things that had happened to me prior to what happened to my boys beginning in 2009. Right. And I just believe that it's important that we as a people heal. And it's important that we understand the pathologies, and we understand the causative factors, and we understand it not in a way that makes excuses for behavior, but that we understand why our behavior happens. Mm-hmm. And being more open about talking about mental health and talking about trauma and just all the things that traditionally as a black community we don't talk about. You know, I'm a 70s kid, and I grew up in an era where, you know, just about everybody had a drunk aunt or uncle such and such, or a crazy aunt or uncle such and such, and not understanding that it's alcoholism, it's mental health, and and now we talk about it. And now we didn't grow up with therapists or knowing about therapy, because again, generally speaking, I'm not suggesting that this is true in all Black families, but generally speaking, you know, therapy was for white people. We didn't go to therapists because what happens in our house stays in our house, right? And you don't tell our business. Right. But it is cathartic to talk about the things that we have experienced and the harm that we have experienced and how it has impacted us. One of the things, I mean, my children, I call them my children, but they're grown, but we talk about a lot of things, and we talk a lot. And Cece, my 20-year-old, we were talking about parenting. She wants to eventually do work with parents. And so we talked about different type of parents. And so I asked her what was her experience with me as her mom. And she said, well, you were cool, you were good until we moved to Mill Valley. And then you were different. And so I explained to her, I said, well, we moved to Mill Valley in 2009 after Vinny had been shot, and after Pops, my dad, had a stroke. And so, yeah, I was different. Right. And she said, oh, like that light came on for her, because she just knew I was different. Right. And so being able to have the conversation about what happened and why I was different. And I'm going to pause you for that, because that's really big, that you got to have that dialogue and that you got to help her understand why you were different. And I want to just go back a little bit, because I want people that are watching this on the live, and I have 10 people watching this on the live, or who might be watching this on the replay, to understand, and if they've been watching this from the very beginning, to fully understand the shift of why you're showing up to do the work that you're doing, because it's embedded in you. And I need to pause and also say that the reason why I'm choosing this week to celebrate social entrepreneurs like yourself is the commitment to the work, the commitment to show up, because you see an urgency. I'm frozen again. You see an urgency in the community, and the work that you're doing in your personal brand, they're interchangeable. They're one. And even you pretty much working 7 days a week, because you see the need and there's an urgency, and you're not waiting for someone else to show up and do the work, because it's necessary. And so I have to say that, because I listen to your passion. I listen to your commitment to it, and how you show up. And in the time that you and I have met, I think that was a year ago, you came to New York. We met in Hempstead at an event. You've been consistent in showing up.
And so it's so important. I say that because so many people apply for this opportunity to talk about their work, but their commitment and how they show up doesn't match the impact that they say they're doing in the community. So I need to express that, because when people see this, that's what a social entrepreneur looks like.
Thank
And
you.
no, thank you. And because I need to pause and stop you, because you and the two other moms I've spoken to, interviewed this week, is something embedded in you. It's your purpose work. And so you
Mhm.
can't shake that.
Mm-mm.
Any way you know how, you wake up and that's who you are. That's how you move, that's how you show up for others. That's it. And so we're almost halfway through this. As you're talking about your family and you're talking about your work, I want you to focus now also talking about educate to elevate, because I want you to ask for help. That's part of self-care. The self-preservation is asking for help. And I want you to do that ask of how others can help you with expanding and growing your business and your vision.
Okay. You know, that's a good question. Someone asked me, do I get paid for what I do? And I'm like, well, not monetarily, which I hope that eventually that will happen, but really, so the ask is I desire to be able to talk, to train, to educate those in all walks of life about the importance of trauma and how it shows up in people's lives in different ways and across the board. So opportunities to do trainings, whether it's with educators, whether it's with people working in community-based organizations, whether it's even with law enforcement, district attorneys' offices, public defenders' offices, because again, oftentimes, and I've been doing this work for a very long time, they don't even understand trauma. And yet they're working with people who have had tremendous amount of trauma, and they've also had trauma themselves. I posed a question to one of my colleagues, how many murder scenes do you think a homicide detective has seen in his career? How many um, horrific deaths have first responders seen in their careers? And where is the help for that? How do they process that? How does that trauma, secondary trauma, how does that manifest in their lives? And so being able to do trainings and to have conversation about trauma and how it impacts us and how it manifests with us, everybody, and in our communities. You mentioned that I'm consistent in the work that I do because there's such a need. And
Right.
you know, this is my 39th year working in the punishment system. 39 years. So you can imagine how much I've seen, how much
Right.
I've heard on both sides of the walls, how many stories I've heard, how much space I've held for people. And
Mm,
it's time that we understand that most times people don't just wake up one morning and harm somebody.
right.
There is a whole pathology that happened before that. And we as a nation have to heal. We as a people have to heal. We as Black people, we have trauma in our DNA. And then oftentimes we're born into trauma.
Right.
And then we witness trauma. And then we cause harm. And so, how do we heal from that? Well, one of the steps is talking about it. And so, when you
Right.
ask what my ask is, it is opportunities to talk to those who don't necessarily hear it from a lay person, if you will. I have
Right.
had many trainings over the years of people, what I call ivory towers, people with all the letters behind their names, who talk about trauma from a very clinical, a very book perspective.
Right.
The ability to hear it firsthand, not only my own, but what I've heard over the years from men and women who I've worked with, everybody who I've worked with, clients that I've have had some kind of trauma, particularly those who have committed what society would call heinous crimes. But
Right.
what about the harm that was done to them? So my ask is opportunity to do trainings, opportunity to have facilitate healing circles, opportunity to teach, because that's what I'm passionate about. We can't
Right.
change that which we don't understand,
Right.
and we don't talk about it enough.
I that's a good ask. I tell you, that's a really good ask. And I watched the uh, Jacob Blake family press conference, and the woman in his family, and I don't recall if it was his daughter or his niece or cousin, but or I think it was his sister. But when she talked about her pain and trauma, and that it's, she was born into this, and she
Mhm,
claimed every black man and woman that had already been
mhm,
murdered before her brother, and she claimed them as her family as
mhm.
well. and
Absolutely.
and so it's just like every day as a black person, and then on top of that, being a black mother in this country that's raising a son or has raised a son,
Mhm.
every time you witness or you hear of another shooting, in justice for our community, it is traumatic. And it's like you never get to a place of what you're promoting of healing, because we're always on a defense. We're always protesting, advocating for the common luxuries of living and breathing.
Right.
So I hope that those that are watching this live or on a replay will reach out to you, will connect with you. Um, your website is www.educatetoelevate.org or .com,
It's .net.
.net. And
Mhm.
you have social media pages as well. And so I'm really glad that you're saying that, because the work that you're doing is very necessary, and that we do need multiple people doing their part in terms of promoting healing and wellness in our community, and especially when it comes to the work that you're doing. In 39 years,
Mhm.
I
Very
say
long
you have
time.
more than enough uh,
Mhm.
um, knowledge to facilitate and encourage people on their wellness journey. Um,
Can I jump
you want,
in for a second? Because I
sure,
want to say something about the videos,
right,
and as it relates to trauma and healing or lack thereof. We don't need to watch every video. We
very
certainly
true.
don't need to watch it multiple times. We don't need to share it. We don't need to post it every time we see it. And because again, we're taking that into our bodies. And most people don't have the capacity to process it and get it out their body. And so it resides in them. And I am just a firm believer in not watching all those videos. I am probably the only person in America who has only seen the 9/11 video once. And I probably didn't see it until 8 or 9 years after 9/11. We know what happened. We don't need to watch it. We know from the reports that Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times. You don't need to watch that, because what does it do to your spirit? What does it do to your mind? Um, and it's just something to consider. And even sharing it. I refuse to share. I don't even watch it, so I'm definitely not going to share it. And I've always been like that because I knew that I didn't want certain things in my spirit. And a conversation I had with Noah, my 20-year-old, and Cece, my 22-year-old, really brought home the fact that they grew up watching Black death porn. It is available to them as soon as they pick up their phone. These are young people who, from the time they were about 12 or 13, have seen Black men and women die in front of them on film. And so if we don't stop watching it, it impacts us. And I know people have different reasons for watching it, which I'm really not clear about. But the fact of the matter is, when you hear the report that this happened, just ask yourself, why do I need to see it for myself? It's not that we don't believe it, especially as Black people. We know it's true. We've known it was true long before we had the ability to actually watch it. So, what are you putting into your psyche and what are you putting into your spirit? That's really important to consider. I'm not trying to put any unnecessary trauma into my psyche or into my spirit. It's just something to think about. And as Ask go, I would love if someone was gifted in technology that they would be willing to manage my website, because I did my website myself, and listen, I can put together some makeup and an outfit, and that is the extent of my creativity. I did okay, I think, but I would love somebody to reach out to me and say, hey, sis, let me bless you by doing your website, or let me give you a good price on doing your website. And again, I know I am a firm believer that people have to make a living, absolutely. But I'm also a firm believer in, a lot of times I do things, most times I do things, and I don't get paid for them in money. But what comes back to me oftentimes is of much greater value. And that's just my philosophy. So if anybody's watching and they're talented in building websites and want to help a sister out, please let me know, because my website is looking a little right now. But I did put it together, and I'm proud that I finally put it together. And it's a really good thing that I accomplished that. So I would say those would be my major ask. And it would be remiss of me if I didn't shout out my mom, who is watching. She probably is one of my biggest supporters. And I believe a couple of my kids are on there, Cece and Janae, I believe.
Okay.
So I just want to shout out my family and all my friends that are constantly supporting me and believing in me. And, let's get this healing. Like, we got to heal as a people, because, yes, that cliche, hurt people, like, there's another part to it. And that's healed people will facilitate the healing of others. So we don't have to just stop at hurt people. Nah, we can heal, and then we can help others to heal as well.
Yes, very true. There's one thing that you did not talk about, and I want you to mention. And I saw that you were on another discussion. You were talking about language matters. Can you talk about that campaign that you were part of?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is so funny is that there are things that I have been talking about forever, and now all of a sudden they become the thing.
Okay.
Language, I have always been a big language matters person. I have always said your words matter. What you say, I'm not taking any excuses if I didn't mean it. And language absolutely matters for a lot of reasons. When we talk about abuse, I'm 57 years old, and I can still remember when I was a kid, my cousins used to always call me fat. I used to always get teased about being fat. And those words, they stuck with me forever and ever and ever. And then they impacted how my self-image and how I felt about myself. Fortunately, I didn't come from a family where there was any verbal abuse. My parents were always very encouraging. But here's another way that words matter in a positive way. When I was a kid, I had really long hair. And my mom would always tell me, it's not what's on your head, it's what's in it. And she would drill that in my head, like, your two little long ponytails don't mean anything if there's nothing inside that head. And so I grew up focused on not what was on my head, but what was in it. And
Right.
so the things that we say and the way that we say it matters. And there's no excuses. When I was facilitating groups, when that was my full-time job, the guys couldn't cuss in my groups, and I would get on their nerves, and I would just say, "Oh, I can't work under these conditions." And then they would go through, well, "I'm a grown man, you can't tell me how to talk." And I would explain to them, "Listen, if you cuss all the time, then when you get mad, you're going to cuss somebody out, and that always escalates situations.
Right.
So I need to know that that you can have an actual conversation without cursing. You can't curse people out on your job, and it makes an impression if you're trying to get an interview, whatever the case may be. So language matters. Language matters in the way that we talk about those behind the walls. And
Right.
if you saw the talk I did, I don't refer, and even today, I talk about the men who I work with who are incarcerated, those behind the walls, the incarcerated people, formerly incarcerated. I don't say inmates.
Right.
I Because again, we have to humanize everybody.
Right.
Everybody deserves for us to see their humanity. And I just strongly believe that.
You know what? You just reminded me of something. 2015, I collaborated with a government agency and for Mental Health Day, which is mid-October. And I invited a young man who had formerly been incarcerated, and he had been following me in social media to show you how the power of social media. And I asked him for some reason, I asked him why he requested my friendship. And then I noticed on his personal page, he was sharing all my mental health stuff, even though it was pertaining to Black mothers. And when he told me his journey, how a therapist had come, I'm frozen again, a therapist had come just 2 weeks before he was supposed to be released to help him. And it was while during that time that she helped him and advocated for him. And he, in all his life, his 30 some odd years, he never had anyone show up for him. And that sounds a lot like you and the work that you're doing. Come to find out he was always labeled bad or all these different names. He had been in foster care and juvenile detention. And it wasn't until this therapist came just before he's supposed to be released that he learned that he was bipolar. He had
Mm,
never been diagnosed before. And when he was released, she helped him. And she helped him get his first job at 39.
mm-hmm,
And I can't remember his therapist's name, but I said I wanted to write her and thank her, because if she had not intervened and taken the time to listen to him, to see him, that his path might have been a different direction. But no one had ever taken the time that continued to give him labels. And so you're right, language does matter. And now he is aware of his status, but he's able to take care of himself because he knows his mental health and he's in tune to what he needs to do for himself and advocate. And so I really, as you're saying all this, I'm just reminded of that experience. And so it is very important that individuals that look like you, who show up every day, who are committed every day, you are desperately needed in those spaces. And so I thank you for that, because you just reminded me of I don't want to say his name online, but I'm sure he's
right.
going to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
But yes,
Yeah. And showing up for people regardless to
right,
what they're doing. And I work with a lot of young men 18 to 25, and they are something else, let me tell you. However, I show up for them and I'm available to them. And there's one young man who I've been working with almost 2 years now, and he came home from prison, and within 6 months he was in jail on a whole different case. And I still took his calls and listened to him, and I encouraged him. I said, while you're in county, you might as well get your high school diploma. You don't have anything else to do. And he worked and he worked and he got his high school diploma. And he was so excited and he was so proud because that was the first thing, that was the first major thing that he had ever accomplished. And he talked about how he said I kept my, I stayed on him, on his helmet, as the young people say. But I really was just encouraging him that he could do it. And it's important that we don't give up on people. And it's important that we encourage people. And it's important that we build relationships with people so that when they are, like the young men that I work with, when they're acting crazy, I tell them, you're acting crazy, right? But because I have a relationship with them and I'm saying it in love, they can hear it and not getting mad, especially those of us who are working in this field. What do I look like getting mad because somebody went back to jail? Because he hasn't learned yet. And that's okay. But I'm not going to be, oh, you didn't take all the information that I gave you. And now I'm mad at you because you went back to jail. In 39 years, I've learned a lot of things about working in this space. And one of the major, most important things, I say this all the time, two of the most important things that I've learned is self-care, which we've talked about, and the importance of self-care, which we talked about. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Right.
And the second thing is not being married to outcomes. So I'm going to show up. I'm going to give 110%. I'm going to have boundaries. Somebody texted me at 8:30 on Saturday morning. I was like, bruh, it's Saturday morning. And just, in love corrected that.
Right.
But I don't be married to outcomes. Because guess what? I taught high school for 8 years. And I may not ever see any of my former students. And that's okay. And I have seen some of my former students in the county jail and in state prisons. And that's so, it's not okay that that's where they are, but I don't take that personal. I've seen people help get people into treatment programs, and then they go to the program and they leave within 48 hours, and the person that got them in the treatment program is mad. And I'm like, no, that's not my job to be mad because they didn't do what they said they wanted to do. My job is to be here when you are ready. My job is to continue to support you and encourage you. And like I said, with the guys and the women that I have the relationship with, tell them they acting crazy when they acting crazy. And that don't make me love you any less, but you acting crazy right now. And so that's how we build people up. That's how we help people to see the possibilities of themselves. And so healing, I can't emphasize it enough because we don't do it. And I'll say this, the people, we trick ourselves. We think that because we have the degrees and the house and the car and the 2.5 kids and the marriage that we're good. But you professionals, y'all need some healing too.
Everybody needs healing.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs healing. I will tell you that in the 8 years that I've been advocating for Black mothers and mental health, I've interviewed maybe 70 Black mothers, and I've heard from stories from mothers who are talking through the little girl inside of them, who experienced domestic violence in their homes, and they haven't healed from that. Mothers who have been molested by uncles and were not able to talk about it, who use publishing their first book as a way of sharing their own stories. In some cases, they still felt obligated to get permission from their families to tell those stories. And so, a degree does not healed you from past traumas, no matter of how much money you are, what job position title you may have. We all experience something, and we're all going through something. And just piggyback onto that, this pandemic, I'll be transparent and say that my anxiety was through the roof. And I remember my doctor saying oh, maybe you should take medication. I said, there's nothing wrong with me having anxiety. Like, you can own how you feel. You can own that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I said, that's not a bad thing. I'm experiencing something I've never experienced in my life. And I'm
Absolutely.
okay with not being okay because this is traumatic for everybody. So yeah, you're
Absolutely.
absolutely right about that.
And I'm okay with saying that I'm not okay. And the video visits, whereas it's a great opportunity, it's a lot of work and it's a lot
Mhm.
of pressure because the sheriff himself has said that he wants this to happen. And so I have been very vocal on this is a lot of work. There are only two of us doing it, and we're doing the best we can. In fact, I had a meeting today with our supervisor team meeting, and she was with the one more thing, and I said, we're doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can. So, again, it's over. I use words like overwhelmed,
Right,
anxiety, all the stuff. And even when I went through when we went through the trauma and the tragedy with the boys, there were some dark days. I don't sit here like, oh, I had it all together all the whole time. No, there were some good days and some bad days and some worse days. And there
right,
were some really dark days. And but I worked through it and I
right,
pushed through it. And I share my story to say that it's not one of my Ayulaisms is, because everybody's always talking about it's hard. You just don't understand it's hard. And I say, you know what? We don't need hard. We don't need easy. We just need possible. And so dealing with trauma and tragedy and disappointment and abandonment and all that, yeah, it is hard, but we don't need easy. We just need possible. And I'm here to say and to be a witness that healing is possible. And it's ugly and it hurts, and you'll get tired of doing the work because the work is forever. It's not like, oh, you did 3 months of work on yourself and now you've arrived. No, that's why I call it my healing journey, because trauma and tragedy are events or a series of events, but healing is a journey. And it's a journey that you will spend the rest of your life going on, because things were constantly happening either to you or around you, or just, I mean, the things that we deal with now that we see that's happening, we're still dying in the streets, and that's still trauma to us as Black people, Black women, Black men, and if you have Black children, particularly Black boys, all this stuff, it's a lot. And so what are the ways that we can, I like to leave just with a couple of ways, practical things. Journal, do some writing, get that energy out of your body. Some people work out. That ain't my thing. But some people work out to get that energy out of their bodies. I write. Like I said, I sit in circles. Um, I do positive things. I surround myself with positive people. And I give back to the community to show what is possible and not just talk about it, but actually be in the trenches, doing this work to help our community and our people heal.
I have to say, I've really have enjoyed your interview. And I hope that everyone that's watching on the live and as well as the replay have taken full note of everything that you said. Unfortunately, I'm frozen again on live, but it's okay because this interview is about Iola, not me. And I'm going to remind everyone that's watching this on the live and the replay the two things that she needs. She needs opportunities to facilitate healing, and she needs help with her technology so she can expand her business, educate to elevate. So I encourage you to reach out to her and be a support so that she can promote healing in our community and touch the lives of so many individuals and families. Um, this is my third night of interviewing Black moms in their social visions to make a change in our community. I've enjoyed this conversation, and you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Less of me and more of Viola. So I appreciate even what the universe is doing and making sure that happens and that you get to ask. That was most important for me as I'm promoting Black Philanthropy Month and Black Business Month, that we constantly keep celebrating visionaries that are doing the work on the ground, those who are showing up every day for those that look like us and even those that don't look like us, but they are acknowledging and see the need and the causes that need to be advocated for, and they show up. Because it's one thing that people can point out and complain about what's happening, but then there's people that roll up their sleeves and do the work. And so we appreciate you, and
Thank
you're one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why I chose you to share with everyone. And so again, please reach out to her and help her with what she needs so she can keep doing the work on a bigger level. I want to let you just see some of these comments so you can be encouraged. Can you read that?
I can. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
follow me on social media. Educate to Elevate also has a Facebook page, as well as my healing journey has a Facebook page. And I have a blog, myhealingjourney.me. And then, of course, my website, educatetoelevate.net. Hi,
Awesome. Awesome.
Nicole. Thank you.
You can read all the comments. I think those are comments from Facebook, but this is live also on YouTube. Um, so I encourage you all that are watching this live or on the replay. Tomorrow, I will be interviewing another mom from California who is advocating for mental health in our community as well. This is my 5-day series of interviews of Black mothers who are creating social change in our community. And we just want to appreciate them and celebrate them. And most importantly, we want to support them so they can keep doing the work. And so,
Absolutely.
yes. So, what is the time there now? Is it 5 or 6 o'clock?
It's like five. Oh, I don't have my glasses on. I do want to shout out tomorrow your Black mom who you are interviewing. She was one of my daughter's best friends in college, and that's how
Oh,
the world works, right? And so I've literally watched her grow up
wow.
from an 18-year-old freshman in college to the amazing woman and mom and wife she is now. So I just want to encourage everybody to tune in again tomorrow.
Yes, please tune in again tomorrow. And please visit all of their websites and social media platforms and encourage them. And if there's anyone watching it on the live or on the replay and you are a social entrepreneur or a business owner, feel free to add your business and websites to the chat. And so we can visit and support you, even though you weren't selected for the interview. But we want to encourage Black business owners to thrive during the month of August and throughout the year, because during this pandemic, we have to show up and support one another because, as you can see, we're all we have. And if we don't support our business owners and encourage them to thrive and be successful, they won't be. So I'm going to say good night to you, but I will be talking to you soon.
Thank
And
you.
great ass, I will have to say, good ass.
You're
Yes,
doing
really.
amazing work, Alicia. I appreciate everything you do. You are doing amazing work and you inspire me.
It goes full circle. It
Thank
goes full circle.
you.
It
Thank
goes full
you.
circle. Yes. This was 3 down and 2 more to go.
Oh, thank you, everybody who watched. God bless.
Yeah. God bless you. Good night.
Good night.
So, as I just said, 3 interviews down and 2 more to go. And I hope that you will support all of the Black moms that I have chosen to interview this week. Please, please, please visit their websites, visit them, their social media pages, and support them. And I will just remind you once again, she is definitely looking for opportunities to facilitate healing in our community. Provide her, if you have any connections or resources or know about opportunities, please reach out to her and share. And if there is anyone that is savvy with website design, extend yourself and reach out to her and see what miracles can take place to help her thrive and be more visible online. So again, I'll see you again tomorrow night. Peace and blessings. Good night.